Hello! All right, we are live and we are going to be doing Escape the Food Prison tonight. Yes. I am Heather Robertson. I am host of the Half Size Me podcast. We've been around since 2012. We would love for you to start listening to the show if you're not already doing so. I release a new episode every Monday, free to you. Go to iTunes, Stitcher Radio. I believe we might be in iHeartRadio now. So those are all ways you can get the free show. Now, I have personally lost 170 pounds and I've been keeping it off since 2012. And what you will know if you listen to me is that what my mission is to help you find a way to break free of dieting, to help you learn a very sustainable and maintainable way to lose weight and get healthy. Because really at the end of the day, it's not important how much you lose or how fast you lose, but really the percentage of weight you get to keep off long term, the longevity of your lifespan, the maintenance phase. So I really preach this idea of focus on maintenance as the goal. It's not the losing weight, it's keeping the weight off. We're all really good at losing weight, right? We can go on extreme fasts, so we can do extreme things for 30, 60 days. We can drop pounds, but then they inevitably come back. My mission for you is, having yo-yo cycled and dieted and binged for a good majority of my life and struggled with extreme obesity, is I don't want you to be in the same pattern I was. And if I can help you break free of that, I would love to do so. So I started the podcast in 2012 to share my maintenance journey with you after losing 170 pounds. And so I know not only is this possible, but you can also maintain it. But if you don't have the right mindset to do it, then it's going to be a very arduous task. And I'm here to help you change your mindset about it. I'm here to help you change your relationship with food. And that's what Escape the Food Prison is all about. It's about identifying what struggle points you have with food and helping you break free from that so you can have a normal relationship with food, so you can enjoy treats and still lose weight. Okay, so tonight we're very blessed. We have a moderator from the Half Size Me community who has joined us, Miss Lauren. She's going to be putting some links up to help you find information that I might be sharing, and she's going to collect your questions, and at the end I save about 20-30 minutes to answer any of your questions. So as I'm going through this and you're listening, if you have a question or you need help with something, I would love to do my very best to help you tonight. Excuse me. So there's two free things that you definitely want to get. I already mentioned the show, right? The Half Size Me podcast show, which comes out every Monday. We're up to, I want to say, 369 episodes. We have so many episodes, we can't fit them all in iTunes anymore. So we've got a lot of shows for you. The other thing that is free, and you've got to get your hands on it, is our new Permanent Fat Loss Crash Course. Permanent Fat Loss Crash Course. 5 lessons. You're going to sign up for it. You're going to get a welcome email to the crash course. You're going to get a new email every day for 5 days. At the end, you're going to get a really special bonus that I think you're going to like, especially if you already like the podcast. And that'll be on the 6th day. If you want the 5 Permanent Fat Loss Crash Course completely for free, you need to become a VIP member. So all you have to do is go to halfsizeme.com/VIP, sign up there. The crash course will be delivered to you. And then you'll be getting, after you get the crash course, you'll be getting about 1 email from me per week with random goodies. It could be a mindset tip. It could be an old podcast episode that's no longer available on iTunes. If you would like an opportunity to possibly coach with me, I'm giving away 2 spots per month. It could be a way for you to ask me a question for an upcoming Ask Coach Heather episode. So lots of good stuff coming to you, not only the crash course, but all the other goodies too. So just want to make you aware of that. So those are the 2 things, the show and the VIP crash course. You want to make sure you get both of those. All right, so tonight we're going to be talking about escaping the food prison. Before we begin, I just want to let you know a couple things. 1, I'm not a doctor, nurse, medical professional, personal trainer, therapist, counselor of any sort. I do weight loss coaching. I've been doing it now for more than 4 years. I really love it. I've gotten to know a lot of people and their struggles, and that's why I'm putting together a lot of this stuff, because what I have seen is consistent struggle points among all of my coaching clients. I've been doing the Half Size Me community since 2013, doing live webinars there, answering the same questions on a routine basis. And what I figured was, since I'm answering these questions over and over and over again, why not actually put them into something that I can help you with? So I'm doing these Facebook Lives this year as a way to help, answering more questions, Ask Coach Heather. I'm doing coaching calls, and I'm also releasing something called Coaching Cast this year. The one that we're going to be talking about tonight is the Escape the Food Prison, but this is a way for you to get some coaching assistance with your food struggles if you can't work one-on-one with me or another coach. It's a way for you to get coaching in a convenient way. It's either emailed or texted to you, your coaching session every day for 25, 30 days, whatever the program you pick. So now, Escape the Food Prison. Why are people struggling with nighttime eating, grazing, sneaking food, okay, and impulse eating? Why are we struggling with that? And honestly, I can tell you, client after client after client, they start out with me where they're quote unquote good all day, right? They don't eat, they don't eat anything that they would consider off their plan during the day, but then nighttime happens and something something out of the ordinary takes us over. Before we know it, we're in the pantry raiding it, we're picking stuff off our kids' plates, we keep going back to the kitchen over and over and over again, and before we know it, we started the day with a really good intention of hitting our calorie goal, our point goal, following our food plan, whatever the thing is that you're on, and then inevitably our behavior at night is like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde scenario where all of a sudden we become a different person. And most of you are probably nodding your heads going, yes, that's me. And this is a reoccurring problem. Here's what I see as being the reason that this is an issue, and there's several different buckets that you might fall into with this. The first one is you're not properly feeding yourself through the day. I see a lot of people very strong with their willpower and conviction early in the day. They maybe go really late on breakfast or skip lunch or don't have any snacks planned because they know that they can make it to a certain point in the day before they start to feel hungry. So they put off eating, and they're not really eating about every 4 hours. They're not making sure they're getting enough protein and fiber in their diet. And then what happens at night, you get what they call compensatory eating, which is when you start to raid the refrigerator and the pantry for highly palatable carbohydrates and fats so you can feel full. Your brain is really good at getting you to eat when you're not doing a thorough job of that. So your body kind of works against you in that way. So one, it's not properly feeding yourself. Two, not having healthy boundaries around food, not setting healthy parameters. I just had a client who was going to go to Mardi Gras, and I said to her, well, what are your personal boundaries around alcohol? She goes, oh, I just do whatever the group does. Wrong answer. When you're talking about your nutrition, about your health, you should have your own personal boundaries, your own personal loving, compassionate no list. I don't do that. I don't drink before 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I only have so many drinks per day. You need to have those healthy boundaries, or you will self-destruct because you have no rules to live by that you create. See, the thing is, we always seek to diets to create the rules for us, which we will then totally sabotage and blow past because we don't want to follow anyone else's rules. Let's just be honest. When you had parents, your parents put, hopefully good, healthy behaviors in place. Eat your vegetables. Don't stay up too late. They gave you healthy boundaries. But when you were left to your own devices, it's kind of like, hey, I'm an adult. I can do whatever I want. Yes, you can, and you also get the repercussions of that. So you stay up late, you overeat the chocolate, you're the one with the tummy ache, you're gaining 20 pounds, and you're not sleeping well because you're staying up to all hours of the night. So there's a repercussion, just like there's a benefit for following those healthy boundaries. So I see a lot of people struggling with having those. Negative self-talk regarding food. The I shouldn't, I can't, I'm bad for eating, X, Y, and Z. It's all this very moral judgment and shame around food. Feeling foods are off limits or have been labeled as good or bad. I tell you what, diet confusion is going to have to actually be a legit thing at some point because most people that come to me, they're like, I hear about keto, hear about intermittent fasting, hear about Weight Watchers, hear about this, hear about that. What do I do? It's like mind blown, right? Where do I even begin with this? Because there's so much competing information, because people are really good at selling their approach, we've all got these rules rules rolling around in our head of what we should do. I had people crying on the phone with me about giving their kid a little bit of macaroni and cheese with dinner because they thought they were giving their child something that was going to harm them. Yet what we don't realize is all of those negative thoughts about food, all of those negative thoughts about macaroni and cheese or chocolate or whatever, it's really unhealthy for us mentally. It creates a lot of stress in our body that we really don't need to have. And so a lot of what I work with people on is let's let go of the stories around the food. Let's get real about what creates weight loss so you don't have to carry around all of those false beliefs that are really not good for you, okay? The other thing we're going to be talking, or the other reason that people are in food prisons, is they deny themselves treats and they're not prioritizing treats into their life. Dr. Yanni Friedhoff said it best. He believes that there should be a prescription for chocolate. If you have not read The Diet Fix yet by Dr. Yanni Friedhoff, I'm going to highly encourage you read that book. If you are paying attention to me, if you're listening to this, you need to read that book. But ultimately, what he's saying is, if you try to go through your diet process and you don't allow treats, chocolate, whatever, you're gonna really struggle to make it to the final goal, and you're gonna have a hard time maintaining that weight once you get there. So this denying ourselves of treats and fun foods is not a good way to go about weight loss, and it creates those food prisons we're talking about. Trying hard to avoid them and it creates a negative backlash in the other direction. Scarcity around food. A lot of us struggle with scarcity around food, and it creates a food prison. If we're fearful, whether we grew up with a low economic situation and maybe we didn't have much food available, or whether we just have been on such restrictive and depriving diets in the past that we're afraid we're never going to get to eat the chocolate, the cake, the whatever, we're going to always overindulge on those foods when they're presented because we don't know how to eat those in moderation. We don't know how to eat any of those and still have balance in our lives. Another reason that we're in the diet or the food prison is that we, after years of restrictive dieting, you may find yourself eating food when it's in front of you because you haven't, or because you shouldn't, or think you can't have it. It's almost like an impulse move. I think I shouldn't and can't have it. It's sitting here in front of me. If I quickly inhale it, I now have sabotaged myself for the entire day, and I've in a way given myself permission to abandon my overly restrictive dieting plan. So eating on a very impulsive way can actually sometimes be the ticket or permission for you to enjoy all those foods you want. And that's one of the reasons people do struggle with impulse eating, because they see it as a license to eat what they want for that 24-hour period, or for that week, or for that vacation. So these are all things that imprison us in the food, in these different food prisons. And we're going to talk a little bit about the different types of prisons you might be stuck in, okay? So when we're talking about a food prison, we're talking about we've got such deep-rooted beliefs, or we've got a certain way of doing things with food that really are unhealthy, and they're creating a cycle where we inevitably are good. I'm always using air quotes when I say that, good, with our food up to a certain point, but then we kind of go off the rafters. We sneak food, we graze, we do all of these unhealthy behaviors with food because we are being so ultra healthy other times of the day or the week, and it's actually backfiring. It's not working in our favor. So we have to start to do something different, but here's the different food prisons you might be trapped in. So there is the rule food prison. Okay, you follow the rules. You're a really good rule follower. You count every calorie and macro and point, but by the end of the day, you fall into a strange vortex of eating all the food in the pantry. And strangely, that does not get tracked or counted. So you are really good at managing everything up until you're not, okay? And that is when you are perfect about tracking up until the nighttime or the weekends. That would probably be you. So if I'm looking at your food log, how do I know I'm trapped in a rural food prison? Because I look at your food log, you got breakfast and lunch tracked every day, but then dinner and past dinner, there's nothing. Weekends, it's a big blank. That's how you kind of know you're in that prison. You see, that is where the tracking ends and the fun eating begins. And to document that would shed light on your food issue. So you're trapped in this prison because ultimately you're scared to death to face the reality of what you're doing, but yet the fact that you're not facing that reality, you're pretending it's not happening, is not serving you at all. If no one sees you eat it, somehow it didn't happen. Heather, I ate all the chocolate bunnies. No one was there. It's like it didn't happen, but your body keeps a really accurate tally on that. So even if no one sees it, it happened. You eat really well during the day, but find you come home and dive into the pantry or fridge and you can't stop eating. Kind of when the gloves are off, you fully go in. You struggle with finding how to enjoy food and to follow the rules at the same time. It very much bothers you if you were to actually eat the treat or whatever and you see your points or calories or macros are off for the day. You have bought into the idea that some foods are good and some foods are bad. You feel an uncomfortable desire to eat the fun food, but it's never in a responsible or moderate way. You don't want to journal the fun food because that will leave an unflattering record of your behaviors, aka you'll really be honest with yourself. You want to hide from the truth, but the truth is the only thing that will really set you free. The ironic thing is I used to be you. I used to be a rule follower. I used to do really good. I was super good at getting breakfast and lunch in, being perfect. But then at night when I was binging and eating all the food that wasn't tied down, strangely that never made it into the food tracker. It wasn't until I was finally willing to face the reality, accept my reality, that I was actually able to break free of my food prison. We've got to start to be honest with ourselves. And you'll notice this if you go back to my other Facebook lives where I talked about refuse to quit and all this other stuff. It's always coming down to acceptance and being honest with yourself. The dishonesty that we go through in this process is really us allowing certain behaviors to go on and not fully embracing where we are right now. Yet by embracing where you are right now, that actually gives you a fighting shot at changing it. Until you're willing to do that, you're pretty much stuck and you're just going to keep repeating it over and over again. When you finally go, I'm going to track all this food I'm eating at night, you at least are breaking into new ground where you have a shot at making a permanent change to your life. Your second food prison, this might be you. Are you in the shame food prison? You're full of shame about this whole thing. This makes you feel very uncomfortable. You use language that triggers shame every time you want to eat a fun food. You talk in a way to feel badly about all the fun food you eat and hope it will force you to make a change. So if I talk to myself ugly enough, if I use enough shaming language, maybe, just maybe, I'll stop doing this because I'm making myself feel so badly about it. You remind yourself that you shouldn't or can't have these fun foods and these treats. While you are eating them, you're saying things like, I'm so weak. I will have to work this off later. I wish I could stop doing this to myself. Why can't I control myself around treats? It's a lot of shaming language. You don't even really enjoy the food when you're eating it because you're already beating yourself up for the fact that you've consumed it to begin with. You use guilt to convince yourself that having a cookie or a treat is off limits. You believe that people with weight to lose should not be having fun foods. You feel a sense of shame when you eat fun foods, and you might not want anyone to see you do this. I have had clients in the 300-pound area where they will sneak an entire half a gallon of ice cream, but if I ask them to go have it out in public, at an ice cream store, a single serving, they tell me, I don't think that heavy people should be eating ice cream. What sense does that make? You're already consuming the ice cream in private, in secret, in your home. You're doing the thing. If we were to actually do it in public, actually eat it like a civilized human being in public, how does that start to change your perception of it? We feel, if we think we can't have it, we think we shouldn't have it, we shame ourselves, then we just continue that cycle going. It's not until you embrace the fact you are totally capable of having ice cream and losing weight and making positive changes. You don't have to be a certain weight or in a certain body in order to enjoy these things. You feel everyone will see you eating the food and think she needs to lose weight. Why is she or he having this? You say things like, I am already too big and I don't need to eat this. I can have treats when I get to my goal weight. I hear this all too often. I'll finally get to have the treats I want, Heather. I'll have the pizza. I'll have the ice cream when I get to my goal weight because then I'll deserve it. I'll be done. That thinking is not good. This is not going to help you change your relationship with food. You can't give yourself permission to have treats. You feel it is forbidden. You have read so many things and been told so many things about fun food that you just can't seem to give yourself permission to eat the treats alone and to enjoy them. You have all the food rules that make you feel shame around eating no carbs, no sugar, no prepackaged or processed food. All of the documentaries and all of the Fitspo has gotten in your head and you feel like now I can't have those things. I'm wrong for having them. I'm filled with guilt and feelings of uncomfortability around these foods. Deep down, you know, if you impulsively eat that donut at work, it gives you unspoken permission to eat off plan for the rest of the day. That's the big one. So with the Escape the Food Prison coaching cast, what I actually walk you through is how to begin to build treats in regularly, because what I see people do all too often is they truly think, I shouldn't have this, I can't have this, I'm bad for having this. They have all these ideas swirling around in their head. But if they can just impulsively eat something, in a way, they've opted today for it not to be one of the days that counts, so they allow that whole spiral to occur. Now they're eating all the things, because today doesn't matter, right? It's that moment of checkout from the process. And what we have to realize is, no. That behavior in of itself is one of the reasons you're stuck in this food prison, number one. But number two, why you're struggling to make real progress. Because it's the all or nothing mentality. The shame makes you feel as though you can't have it. You really quick scarf it down. Now you've got this kind of unseen ticket that says, hey, you know what, today doesn't count. You messed up. So we want to be cautious about that. You feel so much shame and fear around food that you seldom enjoy eating anything. So this is a really sad thing about being in the shame food prison. No matter what you do consume, many times it's still riddled with anxiety and guilt. And that means that it's not even enjoyed. Even if you're taking the day off of your plan, you still aren't really enjoying it. You still feel remorse and guilt about it, and with the idea that tomorrow you'll start anew. We want to break away from that and start to actually enjoy food now without shame and guilt, so you can make progress on your weight loss goals. All right. The last food prison is I have no boundaries and no foundational eating behaviors. I have no parameters, no healthy, loving parental guidelines, nothing that I kind of fall into, and I'm not really prioritizing my health. You don't obsess about rules or shame, but you keep finding yourself diving headfirst into the pantry when you get home. You assume if you see food, you should be able to just eat it without any thought. That was me, by the way. If food was physically present, I didn't know when was good for Heather to eat treats. I didn't know Heather needed to be eating about every 4 hours. I didn't get to be over 300 pounds because I didn't like food, you know what I mean? I got to be over 300 pounds because every food that came into my vicinity was to go down the old palate. It wasn't until I created boundaries and parameters and guidelines for myself and for myself, by the way, here's the difference. Diets will tell you what to do. You will rebel against that. You will end up overeating and you will ultimately end up struggling. If you make your own healthy guidelines and parameters, you define what works for you. Maybe for you every day, it is skipping breakfast and it's eating a hearty lunch and a dinner, and you might wait to have treats until after 4 o'clock. Who knows? Everyone's got a different set of circumstances based on life. And this is what I've learned after coaching hundreds and hundreds of people. Every human being's life is different. You've got to figure out what works for you. But ultimately, there does need to be some structure. Like, we as human beings do not do well without structure. Think about it. When are you usually probably the most on point with everything you do? Most people, it's their work week. Why? Why is that? Because it's forced structure. You show up at 9, you leave at 5, you got a designated lunch break, you've got certain activities to do through the day. It's super structured. Without structure, we have unstructured eating. So we've got to have structure in our lives. Structure from our time, structure from our way of eating food and how we consume food and making sure we're well fed. All of that counts. You eat whatever and whenever you want. You are not thinking about what your body really needs, and you have not structure around it. I tell you now, and this is probably, you can be in many food prisons at the same time, by the way. You could be riddled with shame, and you could have no boundaries and no foundation, because ultimately you might be, finding that you are the kind of person who you react to life. You don't pre-plan for life. So you might find you go to work, oh, I forgot my lunch, or maybe I'm not eating today, maybe I am eating today. Like, that should never happen, in my opinion. You should be eating about every 4 hours, aside from some kind of massive destruction that we can't see coming. Your eating should be without question. It's kind of like you don't expect your car to run with no gas. You would assume if you go in the car and there's no gas in the tank, you aren't going very far, right? Like, you know to put gas in the car. We've got to kind of treat our body in the same way. I'm responsible, Heather is responsible, for putting gas in the engine about every 4 hours. And this is the kind of fuel that works really well for her, and this is how we need to feed her through the day. We've got to start to see ourselves that way. How do I make her fully functional and operational, and not assume that someone else is going to feed her, not assume that there'll be food there when she gets there, wherever she's going. Like, really take that responsibility and pre-think your day. You never really think about what foods make you feel good and will help you function during the day. You allow yourself to walk around and eat or put things in your mouth without sitting and eating off of a plate like a civilized human being. I was a horrible grazer for a long time. I could literally eat an entire dinner, cooking dinner, then sit down and eat another dinner with my family off of a plate. So I was sitting there putting food in my mouth while cooking dinner, then I was plating it up and serving myself again. And that was because I grazed all through the dinner making process. I didn't have a firm rule and boundary for myself around that. When I started to work on that behavior, I created boundaries for myself where I would not do that anymore. And I had a system that I put in place in my kitchen to where I would remember to do it. So what I'm trying to say is, you might be doing those behaviors now. You might see a donut, you might pick it up and start to put it in your mouth as you're walking around the office. No. Button chair, food on plate. That's what we need to be. We need to have certain guidelines that we follow for ourselves so we don't find ourselves grazing randomly through the day. Now that we have identified the 3 types of food prisons, remember we had the shame food prison, the rule follower food prison, and then we had the lacking parameters and healthy foundational eating prison. Okay, so we have these 3 different prisons. We have to begin to think about where we might fall in that, and we're going to talk about how to break out of these prisons. That's what we're going to be talking about tonight. How do we start to get out of those? Because they're really not helping us with our goal. If you're over consuming at night and you're not, you're eating all the stuff in the pantry, you're raiding the freezer, the refrigerator, you're not going to really make progress with your goal. And even if you white knuckle it for a while, but you don't get those behaviors under control, maintenance is going to be really, really difficult for you. So we want to make sure that we're starting to make some progress. So what we want to go ahead and do is talk about how we can start to set up some foundations that are going to help you avoid failure with this. Hold on one second. All right. So if you're struggling with the foundations and the parameters, we want to start to think about feeding your body on regular intervals. Again, I'm going to mention the book, The Diet Fix by Dr. Yanni Friedhoff. And in there, he actually recommends every 2.5 to 3.5 hours. Personally, for me, and having coached a lot of people, I think 4 hours is a much better spread, because I think that's a little bit more realistic based on how everybody works and being able to take breaks. But I can understand from his perspective, being a doctor and seeing patients, how he might have recommended that time window. But for my purposes with you here, we're just going to say to try and shoot for about every 4 hours. Could it be 3.5? Yes. But you want to be eating about every 4 hours, which means that planning kind of has to happen on your end. You aren't going to always have food every 4 hours if you're not careful. And if you don't want to be hitting the drive-through all the time, you're going to need to make sure you got some stuff with you. Make sure that protein and fiber is happening in every meal. So in your stomach, you have kind of a stretch expansion that happens. And if you are not creating that, you'll not have that feeling of fullness. You can graze on things all day long. You can say, well, Heather, I've been a grazer since I was a kid. Well, if you've got a weight problem, that could be a big part of it, because when we graze, we never truly feel satisfied. We never get that stretch capacity to happen in the stomach, which sends the signal to let your brain know that you're content. So we want to make sure we're eating about every 4 hours, getting an appropriate amount of protein, getting some fiber in each meal. Make sure that you are not getting to dinner ravenous. So if you are hungry, coming up on dinner every night, then what that would tell me if I was coaching you is you probably need a good hearty afternoon snack. So if you're eating lunch at 12, but you're not eating dinner until 7 o'clock at night, probably around 3:30, maybe 4, you need to be eating a snack. And it needs to be including protein and some kind of fiber. It needs to be something that's going to sit with you for a while. You need to have some rules for yourself, not following someone else's rules, creating your own, about what you can, that you will eat off of a plate and be sitting down, and that ultimately you are going to plate your food and eat it off a plate like a civilized human being. The other thing that you want to start to do is whenever you're exposed to food, make sure you get a little napkin, a little plate, a little something, put the food on the plate, sit your butt down, and enjoy it like a person. If you're walking around grazing, it is so easy to overconsume food because you're really not paying attention. Was that a tablespoon of hummus? Did you have 3 or 4 chips with it? Like, how do you even know? If you're popping food in your mouth as you're walking by a table, you have no clue how much you're eating for the span of the time. So putting it on a napkin or a plate, sitting down and consuming it would be a huge foundational behavior that you could work on. To banish the shame, you have to start to actually give yourself permission to enjoy treats. I used to wake up, and this is the honest truth, before I started working on these ideas that I'm sharing with you today, I would wake up every day and I would say, Heather, today you're going to follow your plan. You are going to make it to the end of the day without exceeding your calorie allotment. You are not having treats at night. I literally woke up every day doing this to myself. Every stinking night I was in the in the freezer or the pantry binge eating every night. Finally, I got savvy to it and I said, every morning you wake up with this conviction that you're not going to have treats and you swear today's going to be the day, and every night you're face first into the binge food and you're doing this to yourself daily. What if we try something totally different? What if we actually say, Heather, you are absolutely going to have a treat tonight, my dear. You enjoy that treat. As a matter of fact, we're going to take it one step further. We're going to pre-track the treat for tonight. We're going to put that on before we even put coffee and breakfast. And it was amazing. It was like a light bulb moment happened for me. I went from being unable to be compliant with my calorie target day in and day out to finally, just by saying I could absolutely have a treat, pre-planning and tracking it in, and giving myself permission to do it, I immediately started hitting my calorie targets. I immediately started hitting my point targets. And guess what? The weight came off, But it really required that change of thought for me to be able to do that. If you're struggling and you want to banish the shame, fighting this has led you to much shame and guilt since you eat it anyway. Try something different. Give yourself permission to have it. Start to identify this mean person voice and ask yourself, would you talk to a friend this way? I would not tell my friend, you're absolutely not having a treat today. You're not going to have any fun food. I would never say that to another human being, yet I was doing it to myself, right? You need to begin to become your own best friend. You need to coach yourself. If this thought process has plagued you, if you find you rebel against it every night and you're like, oh, I don't have any willpower at night, then let's not pretend that that's going to change. Let's assume you're going to have the same outcome. Let's plan for it and actually pre-plan treats in. Has it really forced any change into your life that has improved your situation? Or is it having the adverse effect by trying to be restrictive and trying to use shameful dialogue? Has it helped you? Probably not, or you wouldn't be tuning into this Facebook Live on Escape the Food Prison about grazing and nighttime eating, right? Like, you wouldn't be here if this was something you were good with. So we want to make sure that we're thinking about this a little bit differently. Watch out for messaging and ideas that promote fear. And I've been really big on this year. People in the community have been sharing with me, Heather, I'm worried about this or I'm fearful of that. If you are taking in information that makes you scared of carbs, makes you scared of fats, makes you scared of protein, makes you scared that you should be skipping meals or you're going to spike your insulin levels, that makes you afraid of this and makes you afraid of that, tune it out. Cut it out of your life. There is no place, when we're talking about something you've got to do, probably on average at least 3 times a day, if not more, which is eat, and you are taking in messages that make you feel fearful and shameful about what you're doing, it's not helping you. I didn't lose 170 pounds living in fear. I finally stopped subscribing to magazines. I stopped listening to messages that were harmful to me. I cut a lot of that stuff out, and I was able to actually put my nose down and hit my calorie targets and eat the treats and lose the weight. It wasn't until I let go of that thinking, and I've done many of these different diet approaches over the years, and I'm going to tell you now, it wasn't until I dismissed all of those fear messages that it was able to happen for me. So I want to encourage you, if you're hearing fear that's creating a lot of that shame spiral, ditch that, get rid of it. If you are afraid, feeling you are doing something wrong, or afraid of a certain type of food, that is not helping you. Eliminating those messages and starting to see what you like to eat and that fits within your calorie budget for the day is going to be key to your success. Now, let's talk about breaking out of the rule food prison. Realize you are only fooling yourself, my dears, okay? Not writing down what you are doing is not helping you. Start to journal how many treats you actually are consuming per day or the calories that you are consuming per day when you are not tracking. So maybe you're the person who you stop magically tracking at lunchtime and it becomes a free-for-all for the rest of the day. Actually start out not trying to reduce your treats. Don't go there. Just write it down. Face the reality. If you're eating 500, 1,000, whatever amount of calories in treats at night, find that out first so you can slowly start to dwindle that number down over time. Make a slow process of reducing this number of pre-tracked treats every day. If you know you follow rules until you don't, and you are not making progress, then ask yourself, is this approach really working for you? It would be better for you to be honest and say, I'm eating an extra 500 or 1,000 calories at night, and make a plan to reduce this over time. Ask yourself if the rules you are trying to follow are really maintainable for you. Are you expecting yourself to follow overly rigid rules for the rest of your life? If not, start finding a way to eat that supports your goals. So I hope all of that helps. We've covered the 3 kinds of food prisons. We've talked about steps you can start to take to break free of those food prisons. If you need more help with this, I'm going to encourage you to check out the link that Lauren is going to put up for Escape the Food Prison and use the coupon code COACHCAST10 to get 10% off of that. So that way you can start to get some one-on-one help for these things. Now, what I'm going to do is I see we've had some wonderful questions submitted. I am going to go ahead and tackle those in the order that Lauren is giving them to me. All right, so Kiki has a question. She has a statement. I identify with so many of these things. Today I hid from my kids to drink a Pepsi and have chips. Kiki, thank you for sharing that. So really, right, what we are doing is we're putting a lot of judgment on that food, whereas maybe all you need to do is get a singular bag of chips, like the ones they have at Subway or a gas station, that's a singular bag of chips, and having it, with your kids, and kind of encouraging the idea of single serving portions versus maybe buying a bag with 5 servings in it or 7 servings in it. My kids had a bag of chips today at Subway. I have absolutely no problem with that, as long as they're in these single serving containers. Where we run into trouble, and I know many of you probably know this, but when it comes to food and consuming food and environment and all of these different things, there's been a ton of research done on home environment and what things tend to trigger overconsumption. So the chips in themselves is not the problem. It's the overconsumption of the chips that is the problem. So we want to make sure that we're teaching our kids, right, how, because they're going to be exposed to chips indefinitely. Like once they leave the nest at 18, they're going to get to make all their own food choices. So better for them to kind of understand how to eat these responsibly and kind of have their own personal boundaries, as opposed to them going into the world where there's going to be huge bags of chips and they don't really know how to moderate that. So just a thought there. Lorna says, such a great point. Fear of food is not good. Dismissing fear message, yes. Yeah, if you keep in mind, everything you feel fearful about, this is a sales tactic, by the way. So whenever someone is posing a fearful thought to you, be afraid of this food, be afraid of that, they're ultimately trying to pivot you toward their agenda. And you want to have a red flag that goes up and says, how do I know? If I'm feeling scared, if I feel like I'm doing everything wrong, if I'm feeling like I'm doing harm to somebody or something else, like that should be an immediate red flag that goes up. If we're talking about permanent fat loss, you losing weight and keeping it off, it's only going to come about through habit change over time. It's not going to come out of you being scared to death and you making radical changes overnight, only then to backslide on later when you want to have pizza, when you want to have a bag of chips. Those things are still going to be in your life. If you really think that you're going to completely abstain for the rest of your life, that's not more than likely realistic for most people. So we want to make sure that you're building your habits in a way to where you are able to enjoy the food and still make progress. All right, so Lauren will keep me posted if there's any more questions, if there's anything you're struggling with tonight, if you need some help. I've got just a couple more minutes. I could take 1 or 2 more questions if you want to submit those. All right. I don't see any more questions coming in, so I'm assuming I must have gotten them all, which is great. No. Okay. All right. Oh, we have one question coming in. I'll take this one and then we'll wrap for tonight. Nope. All right. So we're good. We have no questions for tonight. So let me just recap on what we talked about and then we'll break for tonight. So the next webinar I'll be doing for you is going to be about stop dieting and start losing. And we're going to be talking about how to begin to actually build some of these habits that we're talking about. Again, weight loss, if you start a diet, if you get the meal plan, if you get the yes and no food list, you'll follow it for a time, but you're not going to adhere to it long term. For people to have sustainable habits in their life, it takes a while to build those in. So that's going to be the next one we do in April. So I just want to make you aware of that coming up. And then to recap for tonight, we talked about the food prisons, right? We talked about following the rules very rigidly and then ultimately sabotaging when we find we're breaking away from those. We talked about shame and guilt around food and being trapped in that food prison. And we talked about the food prison of lack of foundational behaviors and of having healthy parameters and personal boundaries around food. So kind of creating this is what I'm good with, this is what my body needs, this is how I must care for my body. Instead of focusing on those things like we've just kind of eaten whatever's there, we don't give much thought to it, we don't really do that extra work in order to care for ourselves. So those are your 3 food prisons. And then just as a recap, how do you start to break out of those? 1, start to be honest with yourself. Honesty is huge. If you want real permanent change in your life, honesty and acceptance is big. And acceptance doesn't mean I'm going to be 300 pounds for the rest of my life. Acceptance means this is where I'm actually at right now. This is what I currently do. And I'm not going to go from this to a pristine, clean diet overnight. I'm just not. I'm going to have to slowly work my way there. I'm going to have to habit change my way there. It's you realizing that if you're feeling shame and guilt around food, that's not working for you. Start to banish the shame by giving yourself express permission to eat those foods and pre-track them and plan them into your day. Yes. Okay. That's funny. All right. So I just realized we were not in the public Facebook page. I will have to share it there. But just to recap, so to break free, we're going to have to make sure that we are focusing on letting go of the shame and guilt, making sure that we are actually planning the treats in, and making sure that we are creating a healthy foundation for ourselves. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me tonight. And I will be back next month with a totally new topic. You take really good care of yourselves, and we will be back in April.